Ladies and gentlemen, the Pop-Tart Bowl will once again emanate from Orlando, Florida. There you go. We have a kickoff time for the Pop-Tart Bowl. As you know, we lost a good Pop-Tart last year at that game, but don't worry, 2 to a pack, as Kansas State was told when they tried to book the Pop-Tart for their celebration and were told, well, he's dead. You ate him. He can't be there. But don't worry, we'll have a mascot next year because there are 2 Pop-Tarts to a pack. So with the more serious stuff out of the way, welcome in. Lake Kick is live, jam-packed, high atop a festive downtown Nashville, Tennessee. CMA Fest is going on all over the place here. True story, we couldn't get food delivered to the building today. So we are surviving on Pop-Tarts, actually, Lunchables, and I had a bunch of crackers. So men has survived far worse. I think we'll make it. The Hall of Fame, however, has serious issues. And we need to talk about it because I think I probably danced around this 3 or 4 times in the past. I never injected it into the show, but we got a real problem in the College Football Hall of Fame. We've got big questions for the 2024 season. Staff changes. Staff sizes, even. Is that about to really fundamentally be altered in the immediate future of college football? And does it matter? Or might I have a very simple solution tonight? Bold, but simple. Someone's calling a friend of the program into question regarding Deion Sanders in Colorado, so I'm going to talk about that. We got the LSU Mood Tracker on the show tonight. We got a jam-packed show, okay, as we do every time we go live. They're watching us in Reidsville, North Carolina, Fontana, California, Saratoga Springs, Utah, and Boaz, Alabama. Thank you guys so much for making everything that we get to do here for a living possible. Appreciate you guys so much. Okay, here we go. I can't believe we're leading the show with this, but it's public service, and it is our job as America's college football show. Sometimes it's our job to roll up our sleeves, get into the weeds, and get our hands dirty. And tonight, we get our hands dirty. Colin, here's a good endpoint for you. The College Football Hall of Fame is a wonderful idea. Love college football. There are a lot of good players and good coaches and good people who have come through this sport, and they deserve to be recognized. We've got no issue with that, right? Right. Okay. We don't have a problem with the Hall of Fame. We don't have a problem with having a very high bar for which you have to clear to get into that Hall of Fame. No problem with any of that. However, I do have a big problem with what the College Football Hall of Fame has become. Not as an entity. Love it and love the folks down there. We've done our show from there twice, so I love all that. It's not them. The fine folks and the staff down there notwithstanding, it's the criteria that, for whatever reason, was constructed in order to make it into that thing. That's the problem. It's another reminder. This week was another reminder that the rules are a disaster. So the nominees for this year's class got, I guess, announced this week. Saban and Meyer headline the class. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer. Something in me tells me they'll both get in. But it's not about who's going to make it. That's the crime of this all. We should be celebrating. I should be celebrating and enjoying names from the past who are being enshrined, rightfully so, in the College Football Hall of Fame. But instead, it's this punch to the chest cavity again of how screwed up the voting process is and the admissions process is for the College Football Hall of Fame. It started last year. It started last year because you start to realize Mike Leach passed away, and Mike Leach will never be a Hall of Famer. As the rules are currently constructed, he'll never be a Hall of Famer. And he's not alone. You know who else is ineligible for the Hall of Fame? College Football Hall of Fame, based on the current criteria. Howard Schnellenberger, who truthfully I assumed was in until yesterday when that was brought to my attention. Pete Carroll at USC. Stetson Bennett just made history at Georgia. Not going to get in. Nick Chubb, top 5 SEC rusher of all time. Sorry. Trevor Lawrence, Clemson. Nope. Colt Brennan put Hawaii football on the map for a generation. No. Julio Jones at Alabama. Who? Never heard of him. Probably going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not good enough for the College Football Hall of Fame. Why? Because of stupid rules. That's why. That was borderline groping. I need to not do that. I appreciate rules. It may sound to you, if you don't know me any better, like I'm someone who likes to constantly lower the bar, and he must be one of those people who likes to bend the rules. Hey, if you can't throw strikes, let's just widen the plate. That's not me at all. That's not me at all. Quite the opposite. But I am a proponent of establishing logic-based rules and then never budging on them. And if you're not good enough, you're not good enough. So it should be the same way with College Football Hall of Fame. If you're not good enough, you're not good enough. Here's the thing, though. A lot of those dudes are good enough. I think most of you would agree with me on this. I didn't even know how deep it went. Like I said, I knew we had a Leach problem last year because Mike Leach passed away, and then all of a sudden you realized, wait, he can't be in the Hall of Fame. Why? He's never going to be eligible for the Hall of Fame. Why? And then, and only then, I think, a large majority of us started to realize, oh, there are guidelines here. Like, unlike Major League Baseball, a pro sport, college football decided to put hard metrics as barometers on inclusion into the College Football Hall of Fame. And as a result, a lot of people who clearly should be in the College Football Hall of Fame aren't going to be in unless we get something done about this, and I'll address that in a second. So, Grishy, interim producer Grishy is here because Jesse irresponsibly is on his honeymoon. Just the audacity, by the way, the audacity. We kid because we care. Do we have the criteria? That's what I was about to ask you before I got sidetracked with Jesse bashing. The criteria. Listen to this. If you're listening on podcast, players must have been selected first-team All-American. A player becomes eligible 10 years after their last college football season. I got no problem with that. But they have to have been a first-team All-American. So I want you to think about that for a second. Post-football record as a citizen is also weighed, so, don't let us find bodies in your trunk. And also, they must have played their last year of college football within the last 50 years. That's for a player. So Nick Chubb, for example, one of the best we've ever seen, one of the best to ever do it in the history of the SEC, but he happens to exist in the same time period as other really good running backs, and so Nick Chubb wasn't a first-team All-American. And because of that, you're not getting in, Nick Chubb. That's the long and short of it. For coaches, though, I've got an even bigger beef because for coaches, there are two rules I got a problem with. One, you have to have coached at least 10 years. Goodbye, Pete Carroll. And number two, you have to have at least a 60% winning percentage over the course of your career. I think if you don't know the sport of college football any better, you may listen to that and you may say, well, what's wrong with that? 60%? That's all? That's all you have to win? Yeah, that's all you have to win. Here's the problem. Not every program's Texas. Not every program's Clemson. Not every program's Michigan. We very clearly understand, all of us watching or listening here, we all understand this is not the NFL. Everything is not built in college sports to push everyone to the middle. College football wasn't built to be college football. The NFL, think about pro sports. The NFL exists for one thing and one thing only. So it can be a professional football league. Major League Baseball exists so it can be a professional baseball league, NBA, basketball, etc. And that's all. There's nothing else to it. It's just that. And so they've got 28, 30, 32, 34 teams in pro cities, and they have, in most sports, salary structures, and then they have a draft structure, and everything's built with competitive balance in mind, and there's nothing else. College sports used to just be universities, and some of them are 900 years old, and some of them are like 90 years old, and that's a stretch, but you get what I'm saying there. Some of them decided to have athletic departments, and some didn't, and the point is, it's so discombobulated, and it's so unbalanced, and there's so many more teams in college sports, nothing is built on the foundation of equality in competitive college athletics. Never has been, financially or competitively, and those two go hand in hand. So in college sports, you have haves and you have have-nots. And the have programs have palatial facilities, and they've got multiple donors who write seven-figure plus checks per year, and you get to basically buy whatever you want to, up to and including players now. And then there are other places where they make sure you only use one paper plate per day in the mess hall because they're broke. If you coach at the latter and not the former, it's really hard to win 60% of your games. So I ask you this way. What if I popped Nick Saban down here in Nashville, Tennessee? Saban, for whatever reason, just coaches Vanderbilt his whole career. How they doing? I think Nick Saban's the best to ever do it. How they doing? Maybe 60%, maybe not. My point there is if pro sports don't even have these hard and fast metrics, where it would make sense because everything is roughly on the up and equal there, why would college football be dumb enough to box themselves in by putting these numbers, not arbitrary, hard and fast numbers in? It's unnecessary. We can look at a coach. We can look at Mike Leach and see he's a 59.7% winning percentage guy. That's the actual number, by the way. Like needed one more game. He passes away. His interim wins the bowl game. Had that been Leach, he'd be at that 60% threshold. You're telling me that's the difference in that dude being a Hall of Famer and not being a Hall of Famer. Mike blanking Leach, not a Hall of Famer. Tell me the story of offense in college football since the 2000s without including Mike Leach. You can't do it, but he's not a Hall of Famer because someone on a calculator decided he's not. And so Pete Carroll's at USC. Tell me the story of college football in the 2000s without Pete Carroll. You can't. You can't. But because he wasn't at USC 10 years, because he was actually good enough to become an NFL head coach, he's not good enough for the College Football Hall of Fame. That's insane. So here's the thing about rules. The rules for the College Football Hall of Fame were not discovered on stone tablets somewhere. We don't just have to blindly adhere to them. You made them. The College Football Hall of Fame is not even that old. It hasn't been around that long. So the group that sat around a table and decided on this nonsense still has the power to undo it. I would humbly suggest you need to exercise that power because I don't know many people in the room who look at Mike Leach, for example, and say, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing we kept him out of there. What are we doing? If you've got a Hall of Fame and the criteria does not warrant Mike Leach getting into the Hall of Fame, you don't really have a College Football Hall of Fame. You've just got a random collection of people. That's what you have. So, negative start to the show tonight. Hopefully a positive ending because I'm not even sure this is opinion. It's just obvious what the right thing to do here is. And I don't even mean grant him special inclusion. You don't have to give preferential treatment to Mike Leach. Just do away with your ridiculous 60% winning percentage number that is necessary for a head coach. You don't need it, is my point. Major League Baseball Hall of Fame voters do not have a minimum baseline of 300 as a batting average. But they understand in their minds, hey, that number, pretty significant. 500 home runs. No one ever wrote that down officially, but people just kind of among themselves decided, 500, it's pretty solid number that we can delineate great all-time power hitters versus really good ones. You don't have to write it down. It's just understood. If it's really that universal and that clear, it'll be understood. So I don't know exactly what the process here is. We were looking at the website today for the Hall of Fame. There was a number. And I love you guys too much to have called you live on the air. But I hope we get some movement on this because it's insane as it currently stands. Let's move on. That's one of the biggest questions in college football right now. I've got 4 more here that actually have to do with this year. I appreciate you guys being tuned in live. If you are, stay, thank you. Just make sure you subscribe to the channel. I had one of you hit me the other day and say, I thought I was subscribed to this channel. I've been watching the show for 3 years. And then I checked and I wasn't subscribed. Yes, I know. A lot of you aren't. Just over 50% of our viewers and listeners are subscribed. It's free. It costs you nothing. There is no string attached to it. You don't get spammed in your email. It just helps us. So make sure, check, even if you think you are, check and make sure you're subscribed. Okay, here we go. Some of the biggest questions in college football this upcoming 2024 season. We just keep going down this list. I got like a million of them. For example, which Big Ten offenses will see the most improvement this year? I think it may surprise you if I were to do a little pop quiz and, hey, everyone gather around here. Big Ten offenses last year. Which one led the entire conference in points per game? Penn State, right? No, couldn't be. Yes, it was. Penn State, points per game last year. Number 1 in the Big Ten. Stats lie to you all the time. Never let your Meemaw tell you otherwise. Stats lie to you all the time. That's why mine never told me that. Meemaw told me stats lie to you all the time. You better have some context behind it. And here's the context. I took myself to State College to watch them play Michigan, and their offense was non-existent. I took myself to Columbus, and I watched them play Ohio State. Their offense was non-existent. So Penn State, are they going to be that much better this year? Drew Aller, talking to some of the NFL guys, they're still sky high on Drew Aller. So they weren't detoured by last year. Points per game, what do we see this year? Not just points per game, in the big games, what do we see? Because they got shut down in those 2 big games last year. They brought Kolnicki in, the offensive coordinator. Is that really the magic button? I wonder that. I wonder at Nebraska, for example. They were 12th in the Big Ten in points per game last year. Horrific passing numbers. They were terrible throwing the ball. I think they could only get better, and that's with starting probably a true freshman in Dylan Raiola this year, if not eventually, or if not immediately eventually. How good can they be? You know, we believe big time in Nebraska's defense. So how good can their offense be? It'll be improved. How much is it improved? And Wisconsin, you know, Wisconsin, here's what's crazy about them. So Paul Chryst and his staff are out because they weren't revolutionary enough. They weren't modernized enough. They just didn't score enough, right? I didn't disagree necessarily. So they brought in Luke Fickell. He brought in Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator. You know, going into the bowl game last year, they were about a field goal per game worse in points per game than they had been the previous year. Just a little hidden stat no one wanted to focus on at the end of last season. You know, year one, learning curve, which I'll grant you. I'll give you a mulligan on that. Well, in year two, that's why we talk about you in this context. You just brought in Tyler Van Dyke from Miami in the transfer portal. I completely believe in the coaching staff as a whole and their ability to not only evaluate, but then develop. How much difference do we see year one to year two? So I'd look at Penn State. I'd look at Nebraska. I'm curious about Wisconsin. I'm curious about Iowa. That's another place where Tim Lester is the offensive coordinator there now. Feels like there's nowhere to go but up. How much? How much up do we get? Next question. Let's go to Knoxville for a second. What kind of impact does Nico Iamaleava have this year at Tennessee? You think back a couple of years ago, 2022, Tennessee felt like they were contending for a playoff spot because they were. They were 11-2 2 seasons ago. And then last season, it was a bridge season. We kind of called it that in the preseason. And it ended up being that. So Joe Milton was the quarterback. Director Colin and I and Jesse actually were at their first game. It's the only game we've been to together. They played Virginia. They smoked them over here in Nissan Stadium. And so it felt good to start off with, but over time you felt, this season feels a little hollow compared to what we were last year. Okay, so they were 11-2 2 years ago. They go 9-4 last year. Here's the harsh reality. Points per game, they went from 1st to 35th. Yards per game, 1st to 19th. Pass yards per game, 5th to 51st. I think Nico Iamaleava is going to be a star in this sport, and I don't think you'll have to wait a couple of years. I think he will be that this year. That dude will end up being a household name in college football, and you don't play a long time in college football, so you got to be really good, really fast. He's got it. We were over there about a month and a half ago, and whether it's on the record or off the record, everybody you talk to around that building, there are certain things you want to hear from them, the least of which is usually the physical stuff. Because people don't miss a whole lot on evaluating quarterbacks these days physically. There are too many reps that you get your eyes on. There are too many people who get their eyes on those reps. It's too high profile a position. So normally, if a guy is a consensus 5-star, from the physical side of things, he's going to be that. But the neck up, the mental side, the intangibles, that's what you want to hear about. And especially in the NIL era, where that sort of thing for a guy who doesn't have his head on straight could really discombobulate and throw things off the rails a little bit. It doesn't sound like it's happened with him at all. So if you've got from the neck up, things in order, and from the neck down, you are just what God made you physically and what you have worked to perfect in your craft, you could do some really special things. What offense would you rather be in? If you're a 5-star talent with a 5-star head on your shoulders, and you're 6'6", 215 or 220 at quarterback, and can throw the ball a mile, where would you rather play? Hendon Hooker lit it up 2 years ago. And it was funny because when you listen to the NFL draft types talk, they were talking about Hendon Hooker, and some people were trying to talk about what he'd do at the next level. The NFL draft types behind the scenes were saying, dude, Heupel is squeezing every ounce of his potential out of him right now. Well, what that told me was not think about the drop-off that will come when he leaves. Yeah, there may be some drop-off. What that told me was Hendon Hooker was never a transcendent type athlete. He was never a 5-star talent. What happens when Heupel gets one? Well, he's got one. He's got one now. How good is he going to be? One of the big questions in college football this year. Which transfer quarterback which of those transfer quarterbacks is going to have the biggest impact this year? Because there are several of them, and some of these, candidly, I think you may have forgotten about. You probably remember Dillon Gabriel went up to Oregon, and that may be the answer. In fact, that's the answer I would come to right off the bat. Like, Dillon Gabriel could win the Heisman at Oregon, and that would not surprise me. So he's in position. He's been plugged into a great system and a great program up there. Do you remember who Duke picked up, though? Do you remember Malik Murphy left Texas and went to Duke? Manny Diaz is the new coach there. Malik Murphy, a couple springs ago at Texas, he goes off and all these schools come after him behind the scenes and he stays at Texas. Well, then he transferred and he went to Duke. And you hadn't heard much else about him. Well, that's because Duke doesn't get talked a whole lot about this time of year. But this fall, as everyone's trying to find sleepers in the ACC, I'm not saying Duke is one, but Malik Murphy's the kind of talent that could wreck a Saturday for a contending team at the very least. So I got him. Will Howard, of course, at Ohio State. But to me, the question with Howard at Ohio State's more like, what do we need to get out of him? Howard's not a guy I'm looking at and saying, you better throw for 3,500 yards. You better do this. You better do that, like a college football Hall of Fame voter. You better hit these certain statistical benchmarks. No, just play smart and look around you to the left and right. You got future Sunday guys all around you. Riley Leonard at Notre Dame. We've got a situation there where every time I talk about Notre Dame on the show, they're called overrated, and I don't even know what they're rated yet because they're literally not rated because it is June. That could be one of the stories of college football this year. Cam Ward at Miami could be one of the stories of college football this year. DJ Uiagalelei at Florida State. Their season largely rests on whether his skill comes in and not only translates, but maybe elevates a level. Florida State's good enough around him. Mike Norvell's got a plenty good enough program around him. So Florida State, as long as Norvell's going to be there, is not going to be in a situation where they're looking around yelling, come help us, come save us. That's not the case. But you got to play high-level ball. DJ can do that. He's capable of that. But I don't think the caliber of play he's had to this point in his career is good enough. So can he elevate it? Because if I'm a Florida State fan, that's what I expect. Like, I look at my coaching staff, I think they're the real deal. So we go get him. He was at Clemson and he was at Oregon State. We bring him in here. He should play the best year of his career here. Doesn't mean he has to be a Heisman finalist, but we got to get a little bit better level of play from him than he's gotten so far in his career. Out of all those guys, I'd probably go with Dillon Gabriel. Like, that's the guy who has the biggest impact. But look, it could also be that, at a place like Notre Dame, just the margins here and there that you haven't had, Riley Leonard, fills that void. And it's not that he's playing head and shoulders above anybody who's been there. They don't need anyone to. They just need someone. It's kind of like the feel at Ohio State. We don't need Will Howard to come in here and rewrite our record books. We just need him to manage this offense and take good care of the ball and distribute and make good decisions. I guess Gabriel would be my answer because he feels like the most prolific numbers guy out of this group, but we'll see. A lot of transfer quarterbacks. Look, I don't want to overlook Cam Ward. And because Colin is going to cut this into two different videos, that's why I gave a little pregnant pause there, because I'm about to talk about him here. Does the new, well, I don't want to say it that way. Will the ACC have a new Tier 1 team? Because it's been Clemson and Florida State, and those are mainstays there at this point. And for the foreseeable future, I guess it feels like they will be. But then there's this drop-off. And there still is that drop-off in the odds market right now. But the odds market is really basing that a lot on what history has said so far. And I wonder if history is going to repeat itself, or if this year in the ACC, all of a sudden, someone ramps up into the main conversation. Like, does someone walk up to the head table, pull out a chair, and sit down and not immediately look like a fraud? That has to be Miami to me if someone does it. But just as surely as I say that, Louisville speaks up, NC State speaks up. I know I got some Virginia Tech folks who will speak up. Virginia Tech's probably got a few more pros on that roster than people realize. Just throwing that out there. So anyway, I don't know if Virginia Tech is poised to enter Tier 1 conversation this year. Now, they could be a year ahead of schedule and do that and prove me wrong. And I'd be happy for them if they did. Miami's the one poised to do it. Miami's the one that won't be hurting for athletes. Miami's the one who can go man for man with you. Miami's the one who in November I could see surging, because if Cam Ward is what we think he can be at quarterback, then they may have the best one in the ACC. To put it flatly, Miami could have the best quarterback in the ACC. If it doesn't pan out, then it's just another December, a long December, a Counting Crows special of questioning everything down there. But if he is, and I've been down there and I've watched practice, he looks insane to me. If he is, then that box being checked, dude, if they had him last year, what would they have done? That's how I think. So then they've got him this year, and like everything else continues to trend up. This is where emotion enters the equation. You know, because I say that about Miami, and a lot of people will say, nah, they suck, nah, this and that. Hear what I said. I said everything's trended up. They won 5 games Mario's first year there. They won 7 last year. That's the definition of trending up. The roster's getting better. It doesn't mean they win the national title this year. That's you putting words in my mouth I didn't say. What I'm saying is just factually correct about them. So then you insert the opinion. And that's the whole, speculative, if Cam Ward is a phenomenal quarterback this year, well, then what? Then what is, that's another Tier 1 team. At the very least, even if they don't win the ACC, that's a team that figures into the equation of who's going to win the ACC. Again, I feel like everything I just said is fact, and yet it will be painted as homerism. NC State is just lurking. To me, they're just lurking. Dave Doran, again, has a team that could push for 8, 9 wins. They can't hit that 10-win range yet. They haven't. Double-digit wins has eluded them. I ask you this, just a little side note here. And I don't know what it is about NC State. I've talked with their folks about this before. I feel like NC State should be a much bigger deal than they are nationally. So think about this. It's a Power 4 team in a major market. They're in Raleigh. They play good football. They haven't been bad at all. They've been good. It's a pretty good fan base. I just don't get how NC State feels as anonymous as they do on the national scene. Like, NC State fans know their program. ACC fans know NC State. But take someone in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Take someone who lives in Manhattan Beach in California. They're college football fans, but they're not native to the ACC footprint. What do they know, or what do they think of when you say NC State? What do they think of? Chuck Amato? Like, what do they think of? It's kind of an anonymous program. It has little to do with what we were talking about here, because anonymous programs can win a conference title just like that. And maybe they pride themselves in that. Maybe they do. But I've always wondered that. Anytime someone asks which is the sleeping giant program out there, and people would go Texas A&M, then I agreed with that. I used to say Central Florida. That's the other one. NC State is like a sleeping giant program, but they're not bad. So it's not the on-the-field product I'm necessarily talking about. It's the on-the-field product and then the country realizing that they have that product on the field. Never made much sense to me. Anyway, let's move on. Do you people realize that we're closing in on Father's Day? Academy Sports and Outdoors does. I got a personalized text, not an automated one, a personalized text from our fine friends at Academy reminding me of the calendar, and therefore I just pass the information on to you, and you do with it what you will. But I promise you this, if you are hunting, if you are on the hunt for Father's Day gear, that QR code on your screen right now is all you need. The link in this show description is all you need, and I strongly implore you to use those methods, because when you shop online through those methods, you help us out. Even if you want to pick up in store, buy online using the QR code if you're watching, or if you're listening on podcast, come look at it later or whatnot, or you got a link in the show description. Go through that little portal and then go buy whatever you want to. I bought a wagon the other day, and we bought it online using the QR code, and we went and picked it up. I'm not looking for discounts. Not looking for discounts at all. I just wanted to help the show out, because I actually do it and all. So Father's Day, maybe your dad likes Big League Chew. Maybe he likes to golf. Maybe he likes to Big League Chew while he golfs, which whomst amongst us doesn't. Doesn't matter. If he's a biker, if he's a camper, if he's the best ever on the grill, go to Academy Sports and Outdoors, because they will have what he needs. They have everything that your father needs. And they have our back too. So I'm very happy to send you their way as Father's Day approaches. Okay, I saw a great story today. It's only like a 4-minute read, too. So, what did Meemaw used to say? Meemaw used to always say there's a big difference between a story and a problem. Big difference between a story and an issue. There is a story over on CBSSports.com right now by the one and only John Talty, friend of the program. And he was talking about staff sizes. College football, over the past decade to decade and a half, became famous for the big-time programs led by Nick Saban loading up on off-field analysts. And therefore, you'd have an army of people. You'd be like, Butch Jones got fired at Tennessee. I wonder what he's doing now. Wait a second. I'm watching Bama versus Arkansas. Did I just see Butch Jones? That's Butch Jones. Yes. Well, he's the head coach at Arkansas State now. But Butch Jones, Ken Wisenhunt used to be an NFL head coach. Were you aware Ken Wisenhunt was just hanging out in Tuscaloosa? Nick Saban went and got all these guys and said, "You're not working right now? You've got experience running an organization, running a program. You've got experience coordinating a side of the ball. Come over here. I'll pay you $40,000 a year, maybe." In fact, Colin, do you have that snippet from the article? This is just such a wild thing. Yeah, there it is. I tweeted it out earlier today. So listen to this paragraph. This is a real thing. So Talty is talking about how Nick Saban discovered this market advantage where he could just take the experienced coaches who have failed and he could bring them to Alabama, pay them 30 or 40 grand a year. I'm not kidding. That's what he paid them. And they could collect their buyout money because they were probably fired. And in the meantime, listen to this paragraph. Mike Locksley teamed with Steve Sarkisian, fresh off a failed stint as USC's coach, to help offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin with third down and red zone strategy. The duo made a combined $80,000 a year right now. Steve Sarkisian took Texas to the playoff last year. Mike Locksley is the head coach at Maryland. Kiffin's been the head coach at Ole Miss. They got better odds to win the SEC than literal Alabama does this year. Saban just had them all over there. And paying Sark and Locks a combined 80 grand a year. Steve Sarkisian makes 8 figures now per year, and Mike Locksley does very, very well for himself too. So this was all happening. And John Talty was writing in this piece, as you look at the highest paid coaches in college football, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 7 of them officially making over $10 million a year. And Brian Kelly is not far off. So Talty was writing about how that entire concept may be going away soon, about how the army of off-field analysts may be going away because you're going to have your budget squeezed because you're about to have to pay the college football players. You're about to have to pay the guys who are on the field being coached. So, is that going to happen? Are you limiting staff size? Sure, you're going to limit it. Is it a bad thing? Not really. Do you care? Probably not, nor should you. But if you do care, because I know we got a lot of coaches that watch the show, a couple of them are probably going to text me before we go off the air tonight getting mad about this, because you do love being able to walk around a corner and peep your head in an office and give a former NFL head coach a special task for the day. Yeah, I understand that's a benefit. It's not a necessity, though. It's just a benefit. But I do have a solution. And I know a couple of big earners in particular who I would like to direct this to, not by name, of course. You want your off-field analyst army to maintain itself. You're making over $10 million a year, and you want to be able to add a group of people and pay them about 40 grand a year apiece. Hey, I got a solution. Pay them yourself. Come off your own hip pocket and pay them. There's no room in the budget. There's room in your budget. There's room in Coach X LLC. If you hadn't already created that, and I know good and well you have because that's how you run those camps, then that's where the money comes from. There's a concept that to me has always made perfect sense. Whether it's in football, whether it's in our business, whether it's in any business. If you make a ton of money doing what you do, and you take personal pride in the product, personal pride in the outcome, etc., in my case, personal pride in the show, and your company and organization doesn't have room in the budget to do every little thing you want to do it yourself. Pay them yourself. Think about how much better everyone is in the long run. But that is such a foreign concept. I've noticed this. I've fought with people in my industry about this in an argumentative fashion because they think it's sacrilege. Like you work at CBS Sports. So If you want something and they're not giving you the budget, you just don't get it. That's just the end of the day. Just go buy it. That's what you do. And it'll pay off down the road if I'm a football coach. Let me ask you a question. If a really good mind, if Steve Sarkisian, that you respected to the ends of the earth, was out there and he'd been fired and he was available and you knew you could bring him in to help certain functions of your offense and you needed to pay him 40 grand and you made 11.3 per year, who in their right mind would let budget stand between them and bringing Steve Sarkisian in to Office 4 down the hall? That's insane. Yet there's a sizable group of people who truly believe, hey, if the company's not going to pay for it, you better never pay a dime yourself. Don't you ever give a dime of your money back. Well, if giving a dime or two or three of your money back goes to further the product, therefore elevating your value even more down the road, and there's in the process, then it even makes financial sense. Penny wise, pound foolish is no way to live, as Meemaw used to say. So there's the solution. If it's a problem that your staffs are going to shrink because of budget, there's the solution. Pay them yourself. Next up, bold predictions continue on this show. Bold predictions are basically what you say you believe enough to where you would bet your own money on it. How about this one? Because this one's really specific and it's fairly bold. First up tonight, we go down to Lake Worth, Florida. FSU loses 2 games, one in the regular season, one in the ACC championship game, and they miss the playoff. This is a 9.25 on the boldness scale. You know what? I'm going to bump it up because if this happens, you should qualify for a chalice of supremacy. So this is a 9.5 on the boldness scale. So if Florida State loses one regular season game, they're way up inside the top 10 going into the conference championship. So you're telling me a team that is squarely in the top 10, and it's Florida State, and everyone remembers what happened last year, so they absolutely would get preferential treatment even. They're in the top 10. They lose the conference title game. You're telling me they're going to be out entirely. Florida State, by the way, is plus 160 to make the playoff, minus 200 not to make the playoff. They are plus 270. They got best odds to win the ACC. So it's not crazy to think they'd be in the ACC title game. I guess it's not crazy to think they'd lose it. I don't even know who they'd be playing or what the spread would be or anything like that. But I have a question that I think is probably either going to be a big story or not a story at all this year, depending on what Notre Dame does. So Notre Dame will not have a conference championship game. There is a scenario where a team like Florida State, who would have played Notre Dame, by the way, a team like Florida State. So let's say they're roughly ranked even or maybe slightly ahead of Notre Dame, and they go into conference championship Saturday. Florida State has to play another game because they won the right to. They lose it. Do they fall behind Notre Dame? A Notre Dame team that sits at home and does nothing because they don't play in a conference? And if that happened, and it happened to Florida State of all teams, and that made them miss out on the playoff, they would burn this thing to the ground. So that's a bold prediction because I don't even think a 10-2 Florida State's being left out. I know that language is still a little bit raw based on what happened last year, but I don't think they'd be left out. Now, if you're talking about they're 10-2 and they go play for the conference title and then they lose it and they go 10-3, maybe then. But no, like a 10-2, I don't know, man. I don't think they'd be left out. 11-2, I guess, would be the record. I don't think they're being left out. So that's a 9.5 on the boldness scale for those reasons. Next up, yeah, this is another 9.5. We're 2 for 2 here. Aaron from Dayton, Ohio. Drew Aller, Heisman finalist this season. Well, I have to be honest with you. When I skimmed through the notes earlier today, I don't like to have a lot of notes on these, so when I skimmed through the tweets earlier today, I thought it said he wins the Heisman. And you know what? Here's what we're going to do, Aaron. Here's what I have to do to you. I think your prediction is a 9 on the boldness scale. But because I already had the staff prepare the elements accordingly, we're just going to call an audible here. I already gave you your rating. We're going to call an audible here. And we're going to just pretend like you predicted Drew Aller to win the Heisman. And I'm going to rank that a 9.5 on the boldness scale. Now, the benefit to you here is, well, we put words in your mouth, so that's a detriment. But the benefit is, if this hits, you win a chalice of supremacy. So Aller is tied for having the 18th best Heisman odds right now. He has the same odds as Shedeur Sanders, as Cade Klubnik, as Miller Moss. That's about the area that he's in right now. I think he's just flat out too big a jump. Last year, he had a little over 2,600 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 2 picks. So Bryce Young 2 years ago won the Heisman, and he threw for 3,300, 32 touchdowns, 5 picks. Jaden Daniels last year, 3,800 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, 4 picks. So I know you got the new offensive coordinator up there. Do you really make that big a jump? I haven't sold my Drew Aller stock or anything like that. And I'm not saying he couldn't have a good year. I'm not saying Penn State couldn't win the Big Ten for all I know. But winning the Heisman, now that is a level of individual statistical achievement that I'm not quite sure they're capable of hitting this year. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Next up, let's go to the Show Me State. Did some storm chasing there last week. I was in Van Buren, Missouri, about 6 hours before a tornado hit. I exit town, and the tornado enters. How does it happen? Whomst amongst us knows. The prediction, though, from Laramie, Wyoming, is that Missouri will make and win a playoff game. This is an 8.75 on the boldness scale. You know it's not that bold. Missouri is plus 184 to make the playoff, minus 230 not to make the playoff. Their over-under win total is 9.5. That's the same as Alabama. That's the same as LSU. That's the same as Ole Miss. A lot is expected of Missouri. Now, it's heavily juiced to the under. I'll grant you that. But their over-win total is 9.5. It's just not as wild as it seems. Their quarterback's got 27 starts. Brady Cook, he's coming back this year. If they get their secondary figured out, and they've got some runway to do it, they start with Murray State and then Buffalo, BC, Vanderbilt. You want another fun little stat to track? Check out how many first-year coaches they faced this year. I think it's like 6 or 7 or something like that. Like half their schedule or more is first-year head coaches, first-year staffs. Just something to keep an eye on. Missouri, I don't think it was a one-hit wonder last year. Making a playoff game and winning a playoff game now. That's what's tough. Maybe this should be a 9. We'll make it a 9. Winning a playoff game, we'll make it a 9. And lastly, this is the most creative prediction we had tonight. John from Texarkana, Texas. Each Power 4 conference gets 2 teams in the playoff. The SEC will get 2 teams. The Big Ten, I think, will get 2 teams. The ACC, I'm fairly confident we'll get 2 teams. Don't ask me which ones, but I think they will. It's less likely, but I think they will. Now, the Big 12, we got some work to do. Iowa State and who? Okay, Iowa State's in. We all know that. Who's the other Big 12 team that makes the playoff? Don't laugh. It really makes me angry when I do this show in this isolation chamber, but I say something, and I know people are listening to it, and they're laughing. It's disrespectful, and frankly, you're above that. So calm it, clear the air. Here we go. Iowa State and who in the Big 12? Kansas State, maybe? Yeah. I have a scenario that I want to throw out there. Here's how this could happen. So let's say there's an 11-1 team versus a 9-3 team in the Big 12 championship game. The 9-3 team wins, they're automatically in. And I think the 11-2 team's probably going to go as well. That's the way that could happen. It could just be that you have 2 really, really, really good teams in the Big 12 this year. That could happen as well. Statistically speaking, it's less likely. And I'm not sure how much respect people are going to look at the Big 12 with. Not me. I love the Big 12. It's America's college football conference. But, you know, the old committee there, how much respect do they have for the Big 12? Having said that, I'm going to give that prediction an 8.7. I'm going to give it an 8.5. 8.5. I'm calling it in the ring. I'm going to give an 8.5 on the boldness scale. Each Power 4 conference, at least 2 teams in the playoff. That still leaves 4 spots. The G5 takes one of them. Still leaves 3 spots. I think it could happen. Yeah, so 8.5. They're watching us in Omaha, Nebraska, Louisville, Kentucky, Fort Myers, Florida. Thank you guys so much. Someone tried to hate on one of our peers earlier today, and we don't go for it. We don't go for that. Hall & Oates are in court in Davidson County right now against each other, but I can't go for that. No can do. So let's take a look at the question here, and I appreciate to the ends of the earth, you guys, when you send questions. It's okay if we disagree, like we're about to kind of right here. It's okay. So here we go. CSU fan from Fort Collins, Colorado. I'll let you do the math there. He said, "Did you see your boy Klatt carrying water for Deion by saying Colorado could win the Big 12 this year?" As a matter of fact, I did see Joel Klatt say that if everything were to go right for Colorado this year, in a conference as unpredictable as the Big 12, they could win it. Did he predict it to happen? I didn't hear that. Did he say it's likely? I did not hear that. He did say it could happen. I'm not going to call that carrying water per se, because this happens to me all the time. That's not carrying water. I don't even care if he's rooting for it to happen. He did play quarterback there, by the way. I don't even care if he's rooting for it to happen. It's not carrying water to state facts. I'm not carrying water for the sky because I call it blue. It just is. So it's unlikely. Their over-under win total's 5.5. To win the Big 12, they're at plus 4,000 odds. Yeah, it would be noteworthy. I'll grant you that. But are you ready to show me what the hierarchy in the Big 12 is going to be? If everyone has that conference figured out. So the Deion tax, it sucks. Deion Sanders, love the dude to death. He is so transcendent. He's such a big name that last year we learned about the Deion tax together, didn't we? We had Deion take the job, and it stirred all of us up because we're college football fans, and we watched him in yesteryear. I'm a Braves fan. That dude played in the World Series and in the Super Bowl. It's insane. Deion Sanders is an athlete, just unbelievable. As a personality, unbelievable. As a TV guy, unbelievable. And now he's going to be the head coach at Colorado. Unbelievable. Sold out the spring game. Unbelievable. Just keep using that word over and over again. So a lot of us, I'll just speak for myself, we're in a situation where we're looking forward to seeing what Deion and Colorado are going to be last year. Here was the problem. They beat TCU in week 1. Josh, why is that a problem? Well, it's not for Colorado. It was a problem because it got everyone's attention, and then a bunch of folks who don't know which way is up in college football could probably not even tell you Colorado's mascot until Friday of the Nebraska game last year. They all come, and they all gather around, and they start spouting off opinions about Colorado. And all of a sudden, you get predictions like Colorado could make the playoff, Colorado this, Shedeur Sanders that. And you've got people like me who predicted a modest improvement for Colorado in year 1, and who said, boy, he's still got a lot of work to do. Let's be patient here. Let's give him some room to work. And they win in week 1, and that's a great story. Okay, you got all that, and then you have like 500 people fly past you on the interstate, and you say, whoa, man, they're flying. And then you get up to the next exit ramp, and there they are. And they've gotten up there, and they start to say all kinds of nonsensical things about Colorado and Deion. Thus, the Deion tax that those of us who know the sport had to pay. So in my world, here's what that sounded like. I go from saying good for Deion Sanders and good for Colorado, and it's still got a long way to go. I mean, they'll crash back to earth eventually this year on the field, but already year 1 is a win. Go from that to having to say, Colorado's not going to make the playoff. Are you crazy? Colorado's not going to be close to Oregon. Are you crazy? Well, that sounds like you're hating on Deion Sanders in Colorado. You're not. You're stating facts. So I got accused of carrying water for him last year. Then I got accused of hating on the dude. And this happened in about the span of 6 days. And so I appreciate Deion. The Deion tax I could do without. In the WNBA right now, they're paying the Caitlin Clark tax. Because you got folks talking about the WNBA who could not tell you anything about their league if their life depended on it, but they got a take right now, and it's nauseating. And I picture people, because there are people out there who are diehard WNBA fans. You got to be drowning in it right now. The CC tax. Well, we've got that. It's the Deion tax in college football. We've got it. We dealt with it last year. Their over-under win total's 5.5 this year. So I'm going to tell you now. When none of those folks are paying attention, the casuals are off doing who knows what they do this time of year, but they'll be back. They'll be back. Deion and Colorado go to Nebraska in week 2. They'll be back, but it's Thursday, June 6th, and I'm telling you, if they go over 5.5, that is a phenomenal story. That's a phenomenal first 2 years. If they do that, enrollments are up out there. The financial contributions and the financial windfall the marketing, the free marketing windfall that they've already enjoyed because of him, it's already a win on so many levels. If they were to win 6 games this year, though, and hit that over, what would people say? If they win 6, I'm telling you that's a phenomenal year. What would people say? I think you know what they would say. Mainly the ones responsible for you paying the Deion tax. I think you know what they would say. So, yeah, it's going to be another one of those years where the conversation's not based in reality. There is no logic. You can take your logic and you wad it up and throw it out your window. There is no logic in this. And then towards the end of the year, there'll be a whole other conversation of, well, if Shador's gone, where's Deion Sanders going? That one's legit, but I'm not having it right now. But yeah, Klatt's not carrying water for them. Or if he is, he is. I don't really care. You know, that's this whole other conversation that you could have. Not even about Joel Klatt, about people in general who talk, people who commentate. Take your color analysts. Take your play-by-play guys. Take people who just have shows like me. There's a fascination with who these people grew up rooting for or where they went to school. I've never cared. I could know that the play-by-play guy has bias for one team and not care. As long as he's doing the job at a high level, I could know. I could have a monitor in the booth. Now, this would be unprofessional, but I'm telling you my feel on it. I could have a monitor in the booth, and I could watch Herb Street fist pump every time Ohio State gets a first down. If he calls the game professionally, I wouldn't care. I could watch Cannell fist pump every time FSU gets a first down. If he calls the game professionally, I don't care. I never really cared about rooting interest. And then we got guys like Gary Danielson at this network who get hated on by everyone because he's got the audacity to just speak his mind and not really care about the consequences, which to me is the best kind of color analyst because he's not beholden to anything or anyone. And the best thing about Danielson is everybody thinks he's a homer of every team except their team because he's a hater of their team. That probably just means you've done your job at a pretty high level. That's my opinion. We have got semi-breaking news. It's in the last 6 hours or so. It's worth a paper pop. FanDuel now has every week 0 and week 1 point spread available. Totals, too. Did you hear what I said, kids? Actually, kids, don't pay attention. I don't want you betting yet. Week 0 and week 1 games are up. True enough. All of them are, but the totals are up, too. And that's not something you're finding across the market. Trust me, I checked today. So, yeah, you want Clemson plus 13 against Georgia, you can get it. But you can also bet that total. And I don't have it in my head just off the top. But it's there. We've got it. So FanDuel is the exclusive odds provider of the show, and we appreciate them. And I've got a lot of ideas, including some I've bounced off them just yesterday that we're working on. But in the meantime, go bet your totals until your little heart and bank account is content. Be responsible about it. I know I joke sometimes. Be very responsible about it. We are in summer, so it's still far enough away where you're not thinking and betting with emotion yet, hopefully. Know what you're doing. It's not the easiest economic time out there. Know what you're doing and know when to take that phone and just toss it over on your couch. It's okay to enjoy a Tuesday night MAC game without having money riding on it. Believe it or not, that's okay. Let's be responsible about this. Last up, in tonight's show at least, I appreciate you guys being tuned in. Make sure you like the video while you're here too. If I have to beg, I'll beg. But we really enjoy being liked. We really love it. The mood tracker is back. What's the temperature of the spin the wheel LSU fan base? The LSU fan mood tracker is a little interesting to me, so I would classify it as don't embarrass me. If you've ever been a part of a team, if you've ever been a part of a group of people doing anything and like you stand up for them, you defend them publicly. And then once you're done touting their ability publicly, you know you secretly still have some doubts about them. So once you get behind closed doors, you look at them and you say, don't embarrass me. Don't embarrass me. You know, if I'm one of your friends and you're about to go race tomorrow and I go talk trash on every street corner about how you're about to smoke these fools, I may or may not believe it. But if I've got some doubt, I'm telling you morning of race, don't you embarrass me. I backed you. Don't embarrass me. Well, that's LSU fans with Brian Kelly right now. They will defend him right now till the ends of the earth. But it's not that they don't have doubts. It's just that you got to understand the LSU fan base. This is a very prideful group of people. It's a very unique part of the country. I love it. I've been accepted in that part of the country ever since I did this. I've been accepted by those folks. Love them to death. They know that. I talked to several of them that I've met through doing this show. And here's the thing I know about LSU folks. There is a chorus they sing publicly that sounds sometimes radically different than the one they sing privately when it's just themselves. Because the pride of the LSU fan base will not allow them to publicly portray vulnerability, even if it's there. Because they're not about to deal with it from Bama folks and Florida folks and A&M folks. They're not going to listen to it. So they're going straight up, shield in the air, united front when they talk about LSU publicly. Now, when they're private, they'll let me in the midst occasionally. And I know when they won the SEC West the first year and everyone thought they were off to the races and then they were historically bad defensively last year, that doesn't accidentally happen. That's not a blip on the radar screen. That's a fundamental problem, and it's got to be rectified. You can't ever be that bad at LSU. Defensively, have a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback come through, and it's totally wasted because we can't get off the field. That's terrible. So it's not that you trash the entire coaching staff. You do take the defensive staff and totally overhaul it, and they did a wonderful job. There is no defensive staff in college football more upgraded year over year than LSU's. They did not make the moves they needed to make in the portal. Their defensive line will not be to the standard that LSU normally is. Doesn't mean that's the end-all, be-all. Just means they got to be really, really good in squeezing every ounce of potential out of this team this year that they can. So, you get your preview magazines coming out right now, and I haven't looked at them yet. I would imagine somewhere in like the 10 to 20 range is where LSU will be. LSU fans have a certain standard for their program. They should. The last 3 coaches they've had there have won championships. So they look at their program and say, if we've got it right, it feels like most anyone within reason can walk in here and win. Accurate. Yes, accurate. Helps to play the title game in the Superdome, but accurate. So Brian Kelly's done it before. He hadn't won a title, but he's won at a high level before. This should be a perfect match. And I'm not saying it's not. They're not saying it's not. They're defending him publicly. But behind the scenes, if they could talk to Brian Kelly, a lot of those LSU folks would say, do not embarrass us. Don't do this. We got your back. Last year, worried us, rattled us a little bit, but you made the staff moves. Got your back. Don't you embarrass us. Why didn't you land more kids out of the portal? You know what? Whatever. Maybe you've got a plan. Don't you embarrass us. Can't have it happen 2 years in a row. Can't have it. And so they open up with USC. That's that Sunday night standalone game there the day before Labor Day Eve in Las Vegas. And then Nichols, and then they're at South Carolina to open conference play. Don't embarrass them. LSU folks, don't forget. Don't embarrass them. Thank you guys so much for watching the show tonight. For interim producer Grishy, for director Colin, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. We'll be here same time Sunday night. Until then, enjoy the weekend, and God bless.